It appears that the talks have broken down. There is no agreement. And so now I fully anticipate Trump will announce in the next day or two that the Iranians are refusing to negotiate in good faith. And we have no alternative but to attack them. And this gets us into the realm of economics and international trade and the develop of a new world order, financial order, because Russia and China both see Iran as a critical country in building this new financial order.
You're watching Capital Cause, and my name is Danny. It is February 26, 2026. Got a little tongue-tied there.
Yeah.
My guest today is former CIA analyst. It's Larry Johnson back on the show. Larry, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, Danny, appreciate the invite.
Yeah. Well, look, we're at a critical point here, not just in the United States, but in the world. Looks like it seemed like it was going to happen last week.
Right.
I'm talking about a strike on Iran vis-a-vis the United States and or Israel. It didn't happen last week. Will this weekend or the following weekend be the week? Or maybe is this all a bluff on Trump's part? Some analysts are saying it's a bluff. I want to get your take here, though, Larry, from what you're hearing from your own analysis. What do you think is the likely outcome here if you had to bet $1?
Ultimately, we're going to attack Iran, and it's going to not work out as the United States hopes it will. In other words, bringing about regime change. I know that the military personnel in leadership positions fully expected the attack to get the order to execute last weekend. A couple of things happened that delayed it. One, interestingly, was Mike Huckabee in his big mouth in his interview with Tucker Carlson, where he said that Israel was entitled to all the land from the Nile to the Euphrates, quoting a passage from Genesis. Well, that includes Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. Those countries weren't real happy with that, and they ended up signing a démarche to the United States that included also Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Indonesia. So the entire region. A lot of those countries normally they don't necessarily get along with each other, but they all came together over this. And the reason that's important is the U.S. combat aircraft that are deployed, as well as the tankers for refueling those aircraft, that are based in Saudi Arabia at the Prince Sultan Air Base and at the Muwafaq al-Salti base in Jordan. So, that created a problem. There's also, though, hesitation on the part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They basically, General Kane and CIA Director Ratcliffe briefed Trump on Sunday that, if you're looking for a slam dunk, a guaranteed success, that's not going to happen. There are too many potential problems if we attack Iran that could actually create significant damage, losses on our side, and we won't be able to affect any kind of change in the government. And we know that because shortly after that Sunday session, you got leaks to, first was the Washington Post, then the New York Times, then the Wall Street Journal, and Axios. And these were all sources connected to General Kane that were putting the word out that the United States, we don't have the inventory to sustain a fight, which this is likely to be a sustained fight, because we can't knock out Iran in just one single blow. And Trump pushed back on that hard, said, "Oh, no, this is gonna be an easy victory." So the last sort of scene in this kabuki theater just took place in Geneva. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff went to Geneva to meet with a representative of the government of Oman who is communicating to the representatives of the government of Iran. We're not meeting directly with the Iranians. It's crazy. And so the Witkoff and Kushner talked to the Omani talked to the Iranians. The Iranians sent back their proposal. And based upon just news, it's broken in the last 15, 20 minutes. So we're talking here on Thursday at around 11 a.m. It appears that the talks have broken down. There is no agreement. And so now I fully anticipate Trump will announce in the next day or two that the Iranians are refusing to negotiate in good faith, and we have no alternative but to attack them. And the Trump is likely to try to do a repeat of Midnight Hammer, which he did on June 24th of 2025. And that's to send some bombers, whether it's B-2, B-52s at high altitude, to drop some bombs on sites in Iran and call it a day. The problem with that is, as Ron has said, if we're attacked, we're going to retaliate, and we're not going to stop until the threat against us is eliminated. So that means every U.S. military installation in the Gulf, and including the deployment right now in Jordan, those sites will be attacked. And we can't rule out that this attack will expand to include Israel. Iran has a robust ballistic missile capability that, in my judgment, we cannot effectively counter.
Now, Larry, obviously we have the midterms coming up. How will a war with Iran affect Trump in the midterms? I mean, this
they'll kill him.
Like, what's the calculus here?
No,
he'd be toast if he went along with this.
No, they're not paying attention to the polls. 20 and we saw this in the interview that Tucker did with Mike Huckabee, and Tucker noted, he says, look, the public opinion polls showed that only about 25% of the American public is support going to war with Iran. And Huckabee says, well, who cares basically what they think. Well, this again reflects terrible judgment on Trump's part. One of the reasons I think our founders wrote into the Constitution that going to war requires congressional authorization is that no one man can make, or woman can make, that decision. And in fact, if it is the decision of a majority of the members of Congress, then hey, it's plenty of blame to go around then. In this case, Trump hasn't even really prepared the public opinion. They haven't created a casus belli to justify attacking Iran. And he created his own problem, because remember how insistent he was that, by God, we obliterated those Iranians. They're a nuclear capable. We obliterated. They'll never be able to build a nuke again. And now he's back to, well, we got to stop them because they're making signs. They're trying to restart their nuclear program. Now, this isn't about the nuclear program. And the biggest lie that the American public are being told is that Iran's the number one sponsor of terrorism. It's just that it's simply not true. The statistics that have been collected for the last 36 years by the CIA and then published through my old office at State Department, the office, when I was there, it was called the Office of the Coordinator for Counterterrorism. Now it's the Bureau of Counterterrorism. But they put out an annual report on international terrorism that comes out the end of April. It's mandated by congressional authority. And what that shows, when you go back and take the statistics over the last 36 years, over 80% of the terrorist attacks that have caused casualties, that resulted in people being killed and wounded, have been carried out by Sunni groups that are sponsored by, receive money and support from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates. Doesn't come from Iran. Never has. Iran is frankly, in the realm of international terrorism, Iran is a minor player. But what the United States ignores is I keep hearing people say, well, they chant death to America. Yeah, I wonder why that is. Oh, might it have something to do with the fact that the United States in 1980 encouraged Saddam Hussein to invade Iran, and then we supplied the chemical precursors used to make mustard gas that was used against the Iranian military and civilians. The Iranians suffered over 250,000 deaths, some estimate as high as 500,000, as a result of that war, which we instigated. So, I imagine the United States would be chanting death to Iran if Iran had killed 250,000 of our people. Remember how upset we got at 9/11 when less than 4,000 died. But, so the United States is completely clueless, divorced from reality, and understanding that we're the ones that have been attacking Iran. It's not the other way around. But the way the narrative is told, and the vast majority of American people believe that we've been minding our own business and these terrible Iranians keep attacking us because they hate us for our freedom.
Now, I spoke to Colonel McGregor about this the other week, actually, and he referenced that what's going on now is actually not just coalescing the Arabs, but it's also coalescing Turkey as well. What's the status of Turkey in all of this? I believe one of the members of the Israeli cabinet about a couple of weeks ago called out Turkey by name as a result. Is Turkey on side with Iran? Because it's always been ambiguous with Turkey. You never know whose side they're playing. What's the status with Turkey? And how will they align with Iran? Because in the case of Saudi, they did sign off on that letter that was sent after Huckabee stooged off that comment about the Greater Israel plan. But Saudi is still on board for a strike on Iran, nonetheless. So talk is cheap, actions matter more. So is Turkey kind of in the same vein as Saudi there? Are they all talk, or do you see could there be bite from Turkey as well?
Yeah, trying to figure out what Turkey's doing. It's really a matter of figuring out what is Erdogan, what is he feeling today? Because he's been all over the board. I mean, let's recall more than a year ago, he collaborated with Israel in ousting Bashar al-Assad from Syria and helping install this character. We used to know him as al-Jalani, now al-Shara, as the new leader of Syria. But the Israelis, and I think it was the Israeli president that was voicing concern. Well, not just concern. He basically was saying that the bigger threat than Iran is going to be Turkey. So it's like once Israel disposes of Iran, if they can, then they'll turn their full attention to Turkey. The Turks, they've made it clear that their airspace is not going to be used by the United States. We do have a major base in Incirlik, and that apparently that cannot be used to launch any attacks on Iran. Turkey was also signatory to that letter expressing great outrage at the remarks of Ambassador Huckabee. So, Turkey, they see themselves, they're still trying to reinvent the Ottoman Empire. That is Erdogan's, ultimate goal. And so to that extent, Turkey is pursuing interests of its own, particularly with working closely with Azerbaijan, which sits just north of Iran in the Caucasus, to consolidate Turkish control of the Caucasus if possible, and so that puts it in potential conflict with Iran. But so far, you have had the Iranian foreign minister meeting last week with the Turkish foreign minister Fidan, and it looks like Turkey for right now is going to be more on the side of Iran than on the side of the United States.
And to what extent? To what extent will they be on this? On the side of Iran?
It'd be more passive. in terms of they're not going to be actively supporting the United States. They're not going to allow our aircraft to land, maybe at Incirlik, but they're not going to get directly involved in fighting or trying to intervene on Iran's half. The reality right now is Iran is probably at its strongest military condition ever in its history because of the support it's been receiving over the last 7 months, stepped up support from Russia and China. It is reportedly the Chinese have provided Iran with an advanced radar that can see out, so they would be able to look to the west 400 miles. So that's a substantial depth that gives Iran advanced warning of any incoming attack. Secondly, that radar integrates with air defense systems that have been provided by Russia, S-300, S-400, which are very capable of not only shooting down the U.S. stealth aircraft, but also the air-to-ground missile, the JASM, that those planes would launch. So Iran's in a position really to fight back. And then on top of it, they have a very robust, I guess, arsenal of ballistic missiles, 18 different varieties. They have perfected a hypersonic missile. That means it travels at a speed in excess of Mach 6 and is maneuverable. I would note the United States does not have one of those. We're trying to develop it, but we've been failing consistently. The Iranians have solved that problem. We haven't.
Right. And then on top of that, now you have the House Democrats trying to force a war powers vote on Iran next week. However, it seems like they don't have, I mean, even if every single Democrat voted against it, which is, I don't think is going to be the case, they still wouldn't have the votes to do it. What's the potency of this vote that you see next week?
Well, I think it'll be moot. I think we will attack Iran before next week. I think we're starting to see the indicators that it'll be March 1st or March 2nd. The plan, look, all of the military assets are in place, and they're now getting to a point that the longer they stay on alert, then you start getting a degradation in capability. The Pentagon itself and then Central Command, which is located just up the road from me at MacDill Air Force Base, they stood up what are called the Crisis Action Team, the CAT, a week ago Friday. So in fact, we're coming up on, it'll be 2 weeks that they've been up and running. That is basically a crisis response cell. It operates 24/7. So and no days off. You don't get to, hey, my weekend's here, I get to take it off. No, everybody, you show up at 7 a.m., work your shift, and then at 7 p.m. at night, the second shift comes on, and they work from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. the next morning. And what this entails is you've got at the Pentagon, you've got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, basically his action officer is in charge of that. You'll have Defense Intelligence Agency represented, INSCOM, which is Army Intelligence Command, represented. You'll have people from what they call plans, the J3, who are doing the actual planning for this operation. You'll have the logistics folks, what's known as J4. You got J2, the intelligence. So all of these different components of the military are assembled in this room. Each sector has a desk, computers, television screens, monitors, and they're processing all the information real time in terms of what's the threat situation, what is Iran likely to do, what are the Chinese and Russians likely to do, and see, this is where China and Russia have really introduced a variable in here that has got the Joint Chiefs justifiably worried, because not only are they supplying weapons to the Iranians and providing personnel to help operate or at least train the Iranians on these weapon systems, they're also providing intelligence. The Chinese did a pretty ballsy thing about a week ago. They published satellite photographs of the U.S. bases in the region, pinpointing where all of the air defense systems are set up and located. They were just sending us a message. We know where you are, and we're sharing all that information with Iran. And Iran can take that information and pre-program it into their ballistic missiles so that they'll be able to hit those precise locations. So this is, and this gets us into the realm of economics and international trade and the develop of a new world order, financial order, because Russia and China both see Iran as a critical country in building this new financial order. Iran, right now, Russia is working on what's called the International North-South Transportation Corridor. So it is to design to take all the goods that are imported into Russia normally through ships that would go transit the Red Sea, Suez Canal, maybe go into the Black Sea or go around up into the Baltic Sea. Now they've got a direct line through Iran that runs from Chabahar in the south all the way north to St. Petersburg, using a combination of railroads and the Caspian Sea. China, as well, is reopening, let's call it what was the old Silk Road. It's the new Silk Road. And they've already demonstrated the capability with railroad, to transit from China into Iran. Again, a quicker and cheaper way of transporting goods than necessarily going out on the ocean and where a ship may have to transit around the Horn of Africa. So both Russia and China are looking at Iran as a critical player, and as they develop this new international economic order, that frankly they don't need the United States, and they're doing everything they can so that it would limit the ability of the U.S. to interfere.
What are the chances that they've actually may not have built a nuclear weapon, but have been given one by, let's say, not even Russia or China, but maybe even North Korea? Is there the possibility of that being the case?
There's always that possibility, but the reason they haven't done it up to this point is for religious reasons. They certainly have the capability. I mean, they've got the technical capability. They could rapidly build the bomb. They need to jack up their uranium enrichment above 90% to produce the fissile material. They've already got the missiles capable of carrying such a device, but they haven't done it because the Ayatollah has ruled for more than 30 years that it's an act of evil. It's a haram. It is something that violates the Islamic belief. It is seen as a sin against God. That's why they haven't done it. And the real irony here now is, if we go forward with this attack, it is going to probably break down the ability of the Ayatollah Khamenei to prevent Iran from getting a nuke, because they will conclude, as North Korea has, if you got a nuke, people leave you alone. They don't come and constantly attack you. So I could see Iran, in the wake of this upcoming attack, deciding, okay, look, they're a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT. Israel isn't. They have allowed IAEA inspectors in the past. Israel doesn't. And yet, the one constantly facing attacks and pressure is Iran, not Israel, even though Israel has nuclear weapons. I think at some point the Iranians are just going to conclude that trying to play along with these so-called international-based rules is simply not worth their time, effort, or energy.
And to what extent do you anticipate, if at all, that Russia and China do assist or intervene in this war with Iran? Clearly, I mean, they wouldn't intervene through direct means, but in what way could they help Iran should a strike occur?
All right, quick break here, because if you're buying gold or silver the normal way, you're probably overpaying by a lot. And that's because most retail dealers quietly tack on these huge markups, sometimes 10%, sometimes 20%, sometimes even 30%. And you don't even notice it. It's like paying $115 for a $100 bill. Doesn't make sense, right? So that's why I've been using the Bullion Standard Pro. It's a membership that basically lets you buy precious metals at real wholesale prices. The same prices that dealers get. So no inflated premiums, no middleman games. Their platform updates every 5 seconds, straight from mints and distributors. So what you see is literally the real market. And here's the crazy part. If you buy something like this gold American Eagle, here's the amount of money you're going to be saving at the time of this recording, at least. So it basically pays for itself multiple folds on many occasions, depending on what you buy. And if you want to try it out, they're hooking up my viewers with an exclusive 10% off their first month. Just use promo code COSM10 at checkout. That's COSM 10 at checkout. So if you're stacking, investing, or just tired of getting hit with hidden markups, check them out now. Bullion Standard Pro. Just click on the link down below in the description box and use promo code COSM10. Now let's get back to the video.
The minute we lift off, the aircraft take off from either Saudi Arabia or Jordan en route to Iran, the Chinese and Russians will alert and let them know. You know, they've just completed or have been doing a joint naval exercise down in the Arabian Sea and Gulf of Oman. Now, this is an annual event that has been, they've done it for since 2019, every year at this time. So this exercise was nothing new. But what it does mean is that they are prepared. They are in a position that if the situation for Iran gets dire, they could very well intervene. I know that the U.S. planners are calculating that China in particular wants to stay out of this fight. I maintain that China is actually going to get heavily involved in testing some of the weapon systems that it has provided to Iran. Better to test it here in a combat environment to see if it really works as they hope it does, without having to wait to try to test it if they're in a conflict, if they're going to war with the United States and China. So there's that aspect to consider. But at a minimum, it's going to be heavy intelligence provided to the Iranians, so they'll know where the attacks are coming from. They'll know what they have to do to defend themselves.
And what of the axis of resistance? Will they be activated in the event of a limited strike? And surely, what about in the event of a full-on strike as well?
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's limited or full on. The U.S. planners seem to think there's a difference. Iran's not going to. They don't care if it's one bomb or if it's 100. They're going to. If the United States uses any kind of military force now, Iran's going to punch back. We're not learning the lesson that we ourselves experienced on 9/11. Now, you're a relatively young guy, so you were a kid back then, but for people who were, let's say, 18 years of age and older, that means, now they're 43. They remember that there was political division, significant division in the United States. There's still a lot of anger over George W. Bush being viewed as having stolen the election from Al Gore. When that attack took place, those partisan differences melted away for a little bit. There was no longer Democrat, Republican, Independent. We were Americans. It brought us together. Well, the same thing happened in Iran last June when they were attacked, got a sucker punch from Israel, and then the United States piled on. That was the first external attack sustained that Iran had experienced since the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s. And that war in the 1980s left a indelible mark on those who experienced it. And that did have a unifying effect for the Iranians that lasted into the 90s. But right now, people who are 50 years of age and younger they really had no memory of that war. They were like 10 years old. The folks are close to 50. Now they've had a unifying event, and the United States keeps telling itself, and we're feeding propaganda to the American people that, there's great opposition in Iran to the Islamic Republic. Over 80%. They're told this by a poll conducted by an outfit in the Netherlands that is indirectly paid for by the National Endowment for Democracy and by USAID. So the poll, in my view, is completely unreliable. But that poll says 80% of the Iranians want to get rid of the Islamic Republic. But people who've been there, and I know two different sources, one American, one actually an Iranian who hadn't been back home for 12 years. They all say that there's actually great unity among the majority of the Iranian people right now. I call it the 9/11 effect. They were attacked by an outsider. It brought them together. And if we attack it, if we go forward with this next round of attacks, it's going to further strengthen the rule of the mullahs, not weaken it.
And so you said earlier that you're looking at between March 1st and 2nd. And I heard over the weekend, one of the reasons why they stalled attacking Iran was because of the moon.
Yeah. And I wrote about this, and some people, the Air Force planners are conditioned to try to launch operations in, where there's no moon at all, or very limited light. But the reality is, that made sense 35 years ago, 40 years ago, but it doesn't make sense anymore because with modern avionics, with modern radars, etc., night or day they can see you. So just flying in the dark doesn't give you any greater protection. If anything, flying in fully blacked out conditions creates a problem for the aircraft that are going to have to be refueled. And this is the other thing that the United States really only has this most risk-free option is that the F-35s will carry a JASSM missile it's an air-to-ground missile. It can travel upwards of 500 miles. So if they take off, for example, from the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, to get to Tehran, it's a 900-mile flight. So you'd expect that plane would fly, let's say, 500, 600 miles to the east, and then it could release its missile without being inside Iranian airspace yet. Because the problem is, if these planes get into Iranian airspace, they're likely to get lit up by the ground air defense of the Iranians. And the other problem here, though, is when we have deployed 1/3 of the Air Force F-35As. It's 7 squadrons, roughly. That's 168 planes. For them to get up and operate, they only have what's called a combat radius of 600 miles. Now, that means one of two things. Either you can fly for 600 miles in one straight direction, in which then you're refueled, and then you can continue flying, or you can only fly out 300 miles, and then you got to turn around and come back if you're not getting refueled. So when you're talking about the number of heavy tankers, the KC-135s that have to be in the air to refuel 168 F-35As, you got a real logistics problem. And then trying to do that in total darkness, very difficult. At least with moonlight, you can see a little bit what you're doing.
Right. And it seems like, what does success look here for the United States?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. They haven't defined what the objective is. And it keeps changing. We got to stop them from building a nuke. Okay, well, Iranians have already said, we don't want a nuke. They've said it publicly. We don't want a nuke. Come in and inspect. We'll let you. We're going to continue to enrich uranium up to like the 20% level because we use it for medical isotopes, but we'll let you inspect those systems too. And then no, we gotta punish the mullahs because they killed protesters. No, we need regime change. So we haven't figured out what it is that we're trying to do. We've our last military adventure, going back to March of last year in the Red Sea, we at least had when we were attacking the Houthis, we did have one clear objective. Number one objective was to restore freedom of navigation, meaning make it possible for any ship that wanted to sail to Israel without getting shot at could do so. That was our objective. How did we do? We failed. We failed to accomplish that objective. That was clearly defined, but even with 2 aircraft carriers and 5 destroyers and complete control of the air, we had air supremacy, we failed to stop the Houthis. And so I'm sitting here wondering, what are we thinking now? Just because we got, 170 F-35s and we got an aircraft carrier down south, we don't have enough firepower to bring about that kind of change in Iran. We, if to put it in sort of a benchmark for people, look how many missiles, rockets, drones, fixed-wing aircraft bombs have been dropped on Ukraine by Russia since February of 2022, last 4 years. An incredible volume. And yet that hasn't forced Ukraine to collapse and to be defeated. So the Air Force advocates have had this fantasy. It goes back to World War II. They always believed that we could win a war from the air. You can't. The only way you win a war is on the ground. And we don't have the troops to put on the ground. People fail to understand Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. And look at the difficulty. We never got full control of Iraq. So this is, I think Donald Trump is responding to this pressure from the Zionists, and we're referring to both Christian Zionists like the likes of Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, Mike Huckabee, as well as those Zionists in Israel who surround Bibi Netanyahu. They really think that they can kill their way out of this. They can destroy the mullahs. And there's been no thought about what comes after. It's just, and we've never thought about what comes after. And I know that firsthand. One of my friends was involved with the Iran task force that was set up at CIA in 2006. And I know that he raised the question because they were talking then about over launching a coup. And he said, okay, we do this, then what? And the answer that came back was, no, don't worry about it. It'll work out. That's where we are still. We haven't properly planned this out in advance. We're just throwing Jell-O at the wall, hoping something sticks.
Are we still waiting on anything else to make its way down to the Gulf of, I guess, to the Mediterranean or the Indian Ocean? Because that's how far we are.
Yeah.
Because, that's a pretty good indication of how much, the United States military respects the reach that Iran can have, especially when they showcase their anti aircraft carrier missiles as well.
Yeah, look, really, all we have is air power. We've deployed a significant amount of air power. It's comparable to what moved into the Gulf 23 years ago when we attacked Iraq. The naval presence is really, we make a lot about the carrier strike group. The Abraham Lincoln is staying anywhere from 700 to 1,000 miles offshore of Iran for fear that Iran will be able to sink those ships. Iran has robust anti-ship missiles and can definitely reach out and touch us. And again, by way of comparison, you recall last March when we were in the Red Sea At one point, we had 2 aircraft carriers with the accompanying complement of at least 5 destroyers going against the Houthis. Now we just got the Abraham Lincoln in the south, and with 3 destroyers. So it doesn't even have the kind of firepower that we had in the Red Sea 8 months ago. As far as the Gerald Ford is concerned, have you been following the drama on that ship?
It's a you know what show, literally.
Yeah. Well, in the 19th century, the sailing ships, they used to have something called the poop deck. Well, now literally they got poop decks inside. Now, poop deck actually didn't mean a place where the sailors went to relieve themselves, to answer the call of nature. It was a French word for square or deck. But the reality is the plumbing system has broken down on the Ford. It looks like they got it fixed. They pulled into Suda Bay in Crete. But, guys are standing in line, guys and gals, standing in line for 45 minutes to answer the call of nature, to take their daily constitutional. And they're eating, supposedly, they don't even have fresh food, that they're eating MREs, which are, that'll actually, one advantage of eating the MRE, usually it constipates people. So that'll help alleviate some of the demand for the latrines, or the heads, as they call them in the Navy. But no, so, and this ship, the Gerald R. Ford, all it's good for is it doesn't have the reach to attack Iran. It is there to defend against Iranian missiles and drones coming into Israel. That's its mission. And it's not going to be on station for another 2 days. That's why I say, once it's on station, then they're ready to go. That'll be the last chess piece in place, because I think the military planners correctly anticipate that Iran will start striking Israel again. And unlike the 12-day war in last June, Iran's not going to stop. They will only stop when Israel or the United States pleads for an end to the action. So we're entering something extremely, extremely dangerous.
And speaking of the 12-day war, during that time, I believe Iran uncovered like a vast cell of saboteurs that have been working for CIA and other intelligence. I think they found like 70 plus intelligence agencies working together on that strike. Have they mitigated those saboteurs from within their networks?
Yeah, that was. There's actually been 2 tranches. So you did have on the ground intelligence assets, both from Mossad and CIA, that were instrumental in destroying some of the ground radar systems, the air defense systems. Those were not destroyed by rockets from outside. Those were destroyed by groups on the ground. A lot of them have been either killed, captured, imprisoned. Then on December 28th, you had this start of a attempted color revolution. It was triggered by the collapse of the central bank that was engineered, as Scott Besson said, by the United States. And as a result of that, you had this eruption of protests, and then intelligence assets that are brought in from the outside using Kurds, Baluchis, this group called the MEC. They inserted personnel, and they were using Starlink terminals that were provided by CIA or through the National Endowment for Democracy, but it was still a CIA operation. So Iran rounded up and destroyed a number of those cells as well. So the intelligence picture for the West, they're blind now, or close to it. They don't have the same capability they did before. So Iran took counterintelligence measures to try to mitigate that threat.
Yeah, and those are a lot harder to regroup than building a bunch of ballistic missiles or stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, building up human intelligence networks is you don't do it in 24 hours, because you have to cultivate relationships, and you have to establish secure means of communication so that you're not easily detected. And unfortunately for those groups that oppose the Islamic Republic, they've been largely, I think, neutralized as a result of these 2 the 12-day war last June, and then this recent flare up end of December, 1st of January.
Yeah. Well, I think that pretty much covers everything I had in store. Anything else you want to bring up, Larry, before we wrap up?
The economic dimension of this.
Sure. We are an economic show, allegedly.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, let's look at if this war starts, the flow of oil out of the Persian Gulf will be interrupted. And it won't necessarily be because that Iran will shut the Straits of Hormuz, but at least Western insurance agencies, they're going to up the insurance on any ship that's going in and out of there.
It'll be uninsurable.
And so that, that's going to have an effect on the price of the cost of transportation for those shipping companies. And then if it actually leads to a reduction in the oil coming out, and we're all already seeing in the Brent market that the price of oil has been spiking upwards. So I think there's an anticipation that oil supplies out of the Persian Gulf could be disrupted. It's they commonly cite a figure of about 21%, 25%. I think it's actually higher, but I could see Iran instituting a system where they would allow ships destined for countries like Indonesia and China to go unhindered, but anything for headed to a country that's aligned with the United States or Israel would be stopped. And in fact, it's possible that in light of Modi's recent visit to Israel, I could see Iran perhaps disrupting the supply of oil to India if necessary.
Is there a chance Iran preeminently strikes?
No. Well, it will be viewed as a preemptive strike, but they're going to be alerted as soon as the planes take off. So a plane taking off from the Prince Sultan base in Saudi Arabia, it's going to have at least an hour flight time before it would be in any kind of position to launch anything in the direction of Iran. As soon as that takes off, the Iranians are going to be alerted by the Chinese and Russians. And then at that point, they'll have the choice. Do they wait until an actual bomb or missile arrives in country? Or do they launch while that attack is inbound? I could make the case that they would launch while the attack was inbound. But the general staff of the Iranian Army and Revolutionary Guard have not consulted with me. So that's just my estimate.
At their own detriment. Well, how would you think that a United States strike on Iran would look like? Would they go for a limited strike at first, or do you think they just go straight to the king? Will they try to decapitate Khamenei?
Well, the first thing they have to do is suppress what's called SEAD, SEAD, suppression of enemy air defense. I've seen some maps which show literally hundreds of air defense sites scattered along the western border of Iran. So that means you're going to have hundreds of sorties by U.S. aircraft. Well, we got like 168 F-35s. By my count, Iran has more air defense sites than that. So the first step is to try to suppress the enemy air defense. The desire of, even though that air-to-ground missile with the JASSM, it has a range of about 500 miles. Understand that the distance from the border, the Saudi Arabian Iranian border on the west, from that point to Tehran is about 270 miles. So even if you're going to launch something at Iran, that means the U.S. aircraft would have to be at least 230 miles from the Iranian-Saudi border in order to have a chance of hitting a target in Tehran. Problem with that is this Chinese radar that has been deployed, reportedly, it looks out, it's got a range of 430 miles. So that means any any U.S. aircraft that's within 250 miles of the Iranian border is going to be seen. It's going to start getting lit up. And once you light it up, then it's it is, if you've got a missile that can travel that distance, they can be in danger of getting shot down. It's not so much them, the tankers. If I'm the Iranians, I just go after the tankers. You take out the tankers, those planes are useless because they got limited range. They don't have unlimited range. So this is you're talking about a very complex air mission. We're not talking one or two planes. Now my friends who are still active duty, they think Trump is going to opt for a repeat of like Midnight Hammer, where you fly some B-2s from Missouri, their air base in Missouri. They do a 36-hour trip. They fly over Iran. They drop some bombs and go home and call it a day. Problem with that is what happened last June had been negotiated between the United States and Iran. There was a mediator, the Saudis or the Qataris, and it was basically a tit for tat. We, the United States, got to drop our bomb. Iran got to drop a missile on Al Udeid Air Force Base in Qatar, and then everybody walked away. And in exchange for that, the United States gave Iran a guarantee that it could ship oil to China. Well, that's not going to happen this time. If the United States dares to even try a, quote, surgical strike, a limited strike, Iran doesn't care. They are then going to unleash their entire arsenal. And in my judgment, the U.S. intelligence community doesn't have a clue about the actual size of the Iranian ballistic missile force.
Well, we'll be all eyes and ears for this weekend and the week ahead.
Could be a nervous time.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up here. Larry, where can people find you, my friend?
I'm at sonar21.com. That's the main site.
We'll have the link to your website down below, so check it out, guys. And if you enjoyed this podcast, drop us a like, comment, go, Larry, go in the comment section. Also hit that bell notification as well so you don't miss an episode. And you want to hit always on the bell notification in case I ever go live. If we do see a strike on Iran this weekend, I may go live just to cover the news. So you don't want to miss that. Hit the bell notification, hit always, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. That's for sure. And follow us on Substack at capitalcosm.substack.com. And so with all that said, thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye.
Thanks, Danny.